Park, voice of the Orange, to preview Syracuse SMU. Matt, always great to chat with you. How you doing today?
Okay, guys, how are you?
We're doing well. Before we get into SMU, let's look back at the last game, and I think something that we've gotten a lot on this show. You've probably gotten it a lot. Yeah.
Can I call before we get into football? Can I just a little shout out to Lawrence Motton and family, and
Yes.
not to try to start on a downer. We can look at all the positives that he brought to the table, but I'll just echo those saying nice things about Lawrence, and he's just a gentle guy, quiet guy. Impacted the community in a lot of ways. Like Coach Boeheim said yesterday, a much better player than he's probably given credit because he just got points. Found a way to put the ball in the bucket at the end of the day. Was super smooth and had great style and an iconic part of Syracuse basketball history. So we're going to miss him.
Yeah, well said, Matt. Appreciate those thoughts and those words. All right, as we were going to say, going on to football now, and you're right, it seems a lot less important than that, but we do have to talk about a season, and we've gotten this a lot this week. I'm sure you've gotten it a lot as well in regards to Rickie Collins. There's a sense among, I'm not saying the entire fan base, but some of the fan base, that this team's in a whole lot of trouble with him at quarterback. It didn't look great last week. We know that. They only scored 3 points. How much of that do you think it's rust? Because he hadn't played in a meaningful game. I know he played the end of the Clemson game, but hadn't started a meaningful game in 3 years. How much of it is that, and that he'll get better? Or are you concerned that this team's in a whole lot of trouble with him running the show?
Well, he'll get better. I think I just think the culture we have now, social media and everything else, it's just everybody's wants to rush to be the first to pronounce this or that. You win a game, you're going to the championship. You're the best thing ever. You lose a game, everybody should be fired, and the quarterback's terrible, and you're never going to win again. And that's the nature of a fan. I just think it was really prone to that in this situation. Let's just let it soak a little bit. Obviously, nobody wants to have the backup quarterback in there. He was the number 2 quarterback for reasons, and it's a shot to the team to lose Steve Angeli. There's no way around that. Getting the next person, even if it's whoever you can name, Patrick Mahomes, next person ready takes buy-in from everybody, and they just haven't gotten it there yet. It's one game. It was a skunk. Maybe there will be more, but I'm not certain there will be. I'd like to just see it play out a little bit. I don't think Rickie Collins is terrible. I don't think he was underprepared, other than just the situation. He hasn't had as many reps, and he's a work in progress, and he's a young player. So it's going to take a minute here for it to work. The other teams are trying too. So going on the road this week, it will not be easy against a talented team and an unusual environment and all of that, 90-degree weather. But if they lose the game, I don't think it's necessarily, you don't have any other options. The third guy is the third guy for a reason. So what can you do other than to keep plugging away and try to do the best you can and get better as you progress?
What about the defensive performance last week? Was that impacted at all, in your opinion, by Rickie Collins in the offense? Meaning, they obviously struggled at times to move the ball, so there were a couple of quick possessions. The defense was right back on the field. They had 3 turnovers, so the defense would come back on the field, and Duke would have pretty good field position on a few occasions. Do you think the defense was impacted at all by what was going on offense, or do you think it was just an off day for that unit as well?
I think that's a convenient excuse. Obviously, turning it over is the biggest thing. Just giving them more possessions and better field position. That's a product of turnovers. And Syracuse benefited from having turnovers plus the onside kick at Clemson the previous week. You had more shots at it. That's always going to benefit teams. I don't think the Syracuse defense, I don't know that they're horrible. I don't think they're especially strong to begin with. I think they've got, we've all known from the jump here, tackling and takeaways are things that are, have to improve for them to be the best of their potential. That's indicative of top defenses, and they don't do a lot of that right now. They don't create a lot of havoc. I would just start with, and it's easier for us to say, but I would just start with tackling. And they didn't tackle well, regardless of what the reasons were last week. I think they're playing enough people that I have a hard time buying they were out there quickly because of turnovers or sudden change. I think, it's not that they're not tackling because they're winded. They're on the sideline. So I just think they got to be in the right position and make the hits and rally to the ball and all those things that you're supposed to do to be a better tackling team. The most discouraging play of the game for me is the Nate Shepard run of whatever it was, 50 yards up the near sideline. And that was a play where it could have been a 4-yard run, but once he got there was nobody home. So he had a burst of speed and away he goes. So those are discouraging. But again, that's why you have practice and you try it again.
Yeah, virtually went untouched, the 50 yards, whatever it was, to the end zone. The week before against Clemson, the defense looked better, and as you said, they got an extra possession with the onside kick. They didn't give up a lot of big plays, right? They gave up the 500 yards, but only 3 explosive plays, I believe, plays of 20 or more yards against Clemson, and then we saw Duke happen. Did you see anything different from the Clemson game to the SMU game? And defensively, I'm talking about. And another thing that we get a lot on the show here is, well, Clemson stinks. Clemson's not that good. I have a hard time believing that Clemson stinks. I know that they're a little bit down this year and obviously have suffered some tough losses. But what do you make of, from one week to the next? Clemson, it seemed like the defense, kept everything in front of them, did a great job. And then, Duke, they gave up some big plays and gave up 35 points.
Yeah, I think it's probably an underestimation of Duke, all of it, really. I mean, Duke is decent. How they go to Tulane and lose, I don't really know. They got blasted by a good Illinois team. I think it's hard. College football is about how you show up every week, and I don't think anybody has it completely figured out. Clemson doesn't stink in the sense of the word that they have no players. They have talent. They just, for whatever reason, the formula isn't working out. I think Cade Klubnik has maybe regressed a little bit. They hadn't played in the previous games with Antonio Williams. He comes back against Syracuse and was a valuable player for them. Clemson, I would like to see take care of North Carolina this week and demonstrate that they're a little more like Clemson. Duke won 9 games last year and then added a really strong freshman class that they like, plus this really expensive quarterback. Who are you to all think that they couldn't come into the Dome and win? Okay, now 38-3 is disheartening. There's no way around that. So I think, from a Syracuse perspective, you try to think that the Duke game this year is last year's Pittsburgh game, with just an inexplicable laying of the egg that happens, and you move on. And that's where this week and the next week and the week after are going to show that. SMU is another one in that category of a team that won a bunch of games last year. They've had some roster overhaul and some attrition to the NFL. But they're going to give it a game, and they're at home and 90 degrees and all these other things. So, there's a reason that Syracuse isn't a favorite going on the road in this game. But then you got Pittsburgh and you got North Carolina. And so let's just let it marinate a little bit before, and I understand talk radio, okay, but I'm just not ready to make any big pronouncement yet about how good or bad anybody is.
You touched on SMU right there. Let's talk about the opponent next. And you've got Rickie Collins making career start number 2 on one side, and then on the other side, you've got Kevin Jennings. I believe this is his 31st appearance in a college football game, or will be on Saturday. Obviously, led them to the college football playoff last year. What stands out to you, I guess, about him particularly, and about this SMU offense that we're going to see?
Well, I think they're productive. They have 3 receivers that are averaging 17 yards a catch or better. They've got the explosive plays. I think Jennings is elusive, and he has thrown 5 picks, but he makes things happen and might make them happen for both teams, right? He's got 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, veteran presence, so this will be a difficult game. I don't think that's anything earth-shattering either. But I think the mentality of the Syracuse locker room, from the head coach down, is reveling in the competition. That's how they showed up so well at Clemson. So to me, maybe they did kind of sniff it a little bit going into the Duke game, and for whatever reason got behind the ball early in that game and were never really in it. I think that had to be an attention grabber. And now you go on the road, you got to bring it a little bit. I think everybody could step up their intensity, and that's in the certainly in defense and tackling. It's in the run game and some other things. I asked Coach Brown this morning. Last week he had said everybody's around Rickie Collins has to step it up. Then he says today he felt like only the offensive line kind of checked that box. Well, that's a lot of other units on the team that didn't then, right? So they all do, and they're going to have to do that until Rickie gets his legs under him.
And it looks like it is possible anyway that this could be a get-right game for the offense going up against statistically the worst passing defense in the country.
Duke wasn't very good either.
Well, right. That's a good point. That is a good point. It was his first start, though, and hopefully, he's a little bit more comfortable, and you learn from game one to game two. Along those lines, what are the keys for this Syracuse team? I would imagine, offense has to be at the top of the list. They've got to be better, certainly a lot better than they were against Duke, but lay out the blueprint for how they get this thing done.
Yeah, I think we kind of answer that the same way every time. I think last week you asked me that, and I'd said, well, I'll skip the obvious answer of turnovers and get to red zone production, and then of course the game wasn't competitive. That was never a factor, and turnovers were a huge factor. Turnovers are always a big thing. Rickie can't throw it to the other team. He's got to just run the offense. The offense works. You don't have to go in and be a superhero. Yes, there are places for Kyle McCord and Steve Angeli and maybe someday Rickie Collins to throw the ball deep and whatever, but I don't think you need to have big explosive plays or 40-yard gains all the time. I think they can work their way through it. Don't, calls upon the discipline of not having the penalties and things that get you behind the chains, and you can't turn it over. But they have it within them to do what needs to be done to win the game. I think it comes down to, as our guy Keith Hernandez would say in this one, the fundies, block and tackle, emphasis on tackle. Those things have got to be improved. Don't give it away. The special teams return mistakes in the Duke game, I mean, they're bad, and they're momentum hurters, and you got to eliminate that stuff. The fortunate thing is, I think obviously you can coach up your return. People should only make those mistakes once, right? And so if you assume that gets cleaned up, then you're already improving.
All right, Matt. We'll see you over there tonight for Fran Brown Show, 7 to 8 o'clock over at Myers Creek.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, guys.